Welcome to Emergency Medicine Match Advice, a Google Hangout web series sponsored by Academic Life and Emergency Medicine, and its editor-in-chief, my Crincubator collaborator, Dr. Michelle Lin from UCSF. Good afternoon, Michelle.
Hello. Oh, you had to say crincubator. You're trying to bring that word into the English dictionary, aren't you?
Yeah, for the viewers who don't know, go to alium.com and find Chief Resident Incubator, and that's our reference to the crincubator, which is a new word in the lexicon of medicine. Today's topic for EM Match Advice, Season 2, by the way, I expected when we got renewed that we would get a set. I wanted, a whole glamorous Hollywood thing, Michelle. I'm a little bit disappointed, but we're back. We were renewed, so this is our first episode of Season 2. And today's topic is entitled VSAS 101, everything you need to know about securing an away rotation in emergency medicine. We told you in Season 1 how important it was to get an away rotation, but we really tell you the mechanics of how to do that. We're going to do that today. And to help navigate VSAS are three outstanding program directors who joined us today. Dr. Susan Stroud, my former from the University of Utah. Hi, Susan. Dr. Cullen Hegarty from Regents Hospital.
Hello.
Dr. Hegarty is a very special person, everyone. He was both a clerkship director and a program director, and in searching for him, I've decided he is a unicorn. There are not many of them out there.
I thought you were saying special.
Oh,
right.
And then Dr. Sherman from Cook County Hospital across town. Hi, everybody.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me.
So, panel, our task today is to provide some tips and tricks that will help the students get the away rotation of their choice. And to get that away rotation, most students must use VSAS. So, VSAS stands for Visiting Student Application Service. And that's it. That's all I know about the topic, is what it stands for. So our panelists today are actually the experts. I really have no working knowledge of what VSAS is. But to get them off the hook a little bit, I'm not really sure who the experts in VSAS really are. There's probably that one lady in that one office at everybody's med school. She's the expert. And aside from her, maybe the clerkship directors have their handle on it, and definitely not the program directors. And I'll tell you that it's a generational thing, right? Like, in general, most program directors were not previously clerkship directors. I think Cullen is certainly an exception to that rule. But our understanding of the nuances of how to apply to different away rotations was already kind of limited. And now you throw this new system that's come along, and we're really far removed from this new current process. And this is a problem, right? There's students here at Northwestern who will occasionally come and contact me with a request to help them get the rotation that they're seeking. And in the old days, I would just pick up the phone and call a colleague at another institution. But now in the world of VSAS, I'm pretty much useless and superfluous to this entire process. This is important. Students associate away rotations as being part of the residency program, right? You're going on an away rotation to check out this program. But really, away rotations are just courses at schools you don't attend. And VSAS has made that delineation very clear. So, on the reverse, I was at SAM just last week, and several students came up to our table at the residency fair asking if I knew when they would get their decisions from Northwestern. I certainly don't know. This is entirely a medical school endeavor. They make the decisions for the most part in this case, and really that's why we're hanging out today. There are two groups of learners that need to learn this process. The students who want to get the right away rotation, but I think today's modern program directors also need a better understanding of this process in order to provide better advice to our students. So before we get into most of the question and answer portion, I want to do a quick roundtable Q&A with our panelists. We're going to ask three quick questions. Do you have a required EM rotation at your affiliated medical school? How many visiting students do you usually accommodate per year? And does your institution use VSAS? So we're going to go just down the panel. So Susan, do you have a required rotation?
We do not have a required emergency medicine rotation. However, we have just become one of 5 required sub-Is. So there's a sub-I requirement, and every fourth-year student has to do it. We are one of 5 they can choose from. So things are changing for us a little bit this year. We have 34 spots this year, and the amount of spots that we have for visiting students, we cap all of our students at 8 students total each month. And the amount of spots we have for visiting students is really delegated by how many spots our own students are taking, because our school uses that as a priority. So we have some, and we do use VSAS.
Okay, great. Cullen.
So we are a required rotation in the medical school. We have, with the medical school, probably 10 sites that they can choose for their required rotation, and we're one of them. And we do accept visiting students for our advanced EM rotation. So in addition to the core required, we have an advanced rotation that the University of Minnesota students can take, or visiting students, and I would guess we get 20 to 30 visiting students per summer coming, and we do use VSAS. We've been using it for about the last 3 years or so. So prior to that, we did the old school, you emailed, you called, you coordinated it that way, but we have been using VSAS now for the last few years.
Okay, great. And Scott?
Yes, we are one of 2 sites with Rush University, and we have about 6 students each month from Rush and about 6 to 8 visiting students. And then we have used VSAS. I think this is our 3rd year using it.
So, you know, that's really very helpful. And Michelle, I don't know if you have any different thematic answer there, but, you know, I think some things to take away for the students is that more and more of these clerkships are becoming required, or at least a number of the seats, like at Susan's school, are being taken up by a subset of the medical school class, and that's who they serve first. Remember, this is a medical school endeavor, handing out courses and elective rotations and away rotations. So their own students are the priority. And that means there's going to be perhaps less and less spots for visiting clerks the more popular it becomes. We have almost 200 medical students at Northwestern who are required rotation. It leaves 2 or 3 spots a month at most, and I see maybe 10 visiting students the whole season. So VSAS can help facilitate perhaps getting more applicants for those very few spots because it's easy to click boxes. But unless you're incredibly flexible with your block dates, there's very little wiggle room in our system. So I wanted to start with that point because I think it will inform the rest of our discussion. And then for our regular viewers, our only reference that we'll have on the website for this Hangout is the AAMC VSAS web pages. We'll have a link to that. They're very useful. They're chock full of information, particularly the FAQ section. So I would recommend going to look at that. There's not much else in published literature. Don't go bother with PubMed or Google Scholar. So let's get to the tips and tricks. We're going to start with Dr. Stroud from Utah. What is VSAS?
So glad you asked that, Mike. I'm very happy for that FAQ section myself. So the VSAS is an endeavor that is very similar to the centralized medical school application service. In fact, it's run by the same people, and it's basically kind of the same thing. And this was asked for by 2 committees of the AAMC, which was the Committee on Student Records, basically the paperwork division, and the Committee on Student Affairs, basically the let's be nice to the students are paying a lot of money division. So they got together and said, hey, let's reduce all the stress, the paperwork, and the miscommunication for everybody by trying to centralize this process. And they started this in April of 2008, and it has been just continuously going since that time. Now, I know that several of the panel members have already talked about the fact that their schools and my school also didn't use this till about 3 years ago. So it started slow, and now it's gotten so pervasive that basically every single United States LCME accredited school and every single osteopathic school that is a COCA accredited school participates in VSAS. So that is 171 schools that participate. So if you're a student in one of these schools, you can participate in VSAS. There are also 147 institutions that are host institutions, meaning they offer electives to people. And there are a few places that offer electives that aren't schools, like the NIH Clinical Center and the Sloan Kettering Memorial Cancer Center are kind of standalone offerings for students in kind of all fields. So you can do VSAS rotations in places that aren't really even schools. However, you are out of luck if you are a Canadian medical student or if you are attending an international medical school. If you are a student there, you are not eligible to participate in VSAS. However, if you go to that same link that I think Mike is going to provide for you, there's actually a searchable database of elective opportunities for people who can apply outside of VSAS to experiences in the United States and Canada. Like most of the other things associated with getting a medical degree and going through residency, this does cost a lot of money, depending on how you do it. So for a student, this is actually the cheapest of the 3 services run by the AAMC. So for VSAS, students are charged a fee per institution that they apply to. So it's not per rotation, it's per institution. And for the very first institution, it's $35. So you can apply to as many rotations at that particular institution as you want without incurring an additional fee. And then for each additional institution that you apply to, it's another $15. So this is an example of this is at my school, we have a sub-internship or an advanced rotation, a general rotation in emergency medicine, a rotation at a standalone, more rural site, and an ultrasound rotation. And you could pay, if this was the only institution you were applying to, $35 and apply to every single one of those rotations without incurring more money. The other thing to know about this is that the schools that host all these rotations, because they belong to this VSAS system, they have agreed not to charge any additional application fees for actually just applying to the rotation, but they can charge a processing or registration or a tuition fee once they offer you a spot. So, for example, at the University of Utah, if we offer you a spot, you have 5 days to pay my School of Medicine $125 to secure that spot, or it's no longer yours. And I'd love to say that some of that money trickles down so we can give you a more excellent experience, but actually it just involves more money for the School of Medicine. And so a few things that people should know about VSAS if you're a student, just a very general thing, is Mike was talking earlier about that very nice lady somewhere in the dean's office who is the only person who knows how to use all of these devices and how to make this mechanism work. Go meet that person, find out who they are, bake them cookies, and make them your friend, because that will help you a lot. Don't think that the clerkship directors or the medical student clerkship coordinators on our ends of this actually understand the process. It's kind of a blind box for them as well. When you go to look at the institutions that you're interested in rotating at, remember that they all have block dates. Mike alluded to this earlier. So a lot of our dates are not flexible, and you've got to make sure that your calendar can associate with the dates that are available to you. And students, you are empowered. You are empowered to upload your CV and your photograph and your immunization record, which holds up a lot of applications. So take advantage, and anything that VSAS will let you upload, do it yourself and be ready to do it as soon as you can. Make sure that you look and see if anybody requires anything additional to the standard VSAS stuff. We require a letter of why do you want to come and hang out with us in Utah. So if you don't send us that letter, we're not going to look at your application because it's not complete. So just make sure you check all those boxes, and then look at your email very frequently. Just like Mike was saying, he's only got about 10 spots. So those are very, very competitive spots. So you may have a very short period of time, if you get offered one of those spots, to take it before your chance expires and that opportunity goes to another student. So that's kind of the general mechanics of VSAS, and I think there's more in-depth knowledge to be gained by someone else on the panel.
Susan, actually, I have a, sorry to interrupt, but something you said kind of struck me. Is one is making friends with the VSAS person in the medical school, but I wouldn't discount the clerkship coordinator in terms of the value they might add, because they have now lived this for several years, and so I picked the brains of my clerkship coordinator just last night. I'm like, oh my God, I should probably ask for Sandra. And I'm like, Sandra, what are the common pitfalls? And immediately she had a list of things she recommended. And like Susan said, it's about reading the directions. Something as simple as not uploading your one letter of recommendation about why you want to come rotate with us. Or the other thing is you're supposed to, for us at UCSF, we recommend, we actually require step 1 scores actually be included as well. And if you're going to miss one of these elements, sure, your application is not going to get through, and we're going to probably take someone else. So just read the instructions, actually get to know your clerkship coordinator as well, and they can also give you some pearls.
Yeah, I'm glad you gave Cassandra a shout out. I'm going to give a shout out to Susan, our clerkship director. You're a better student than I am of life, Michelle, because you did your homework yesterday. I did mine about 2 hours ago. And in her cube, she called that lady in that office, who I also want to give a shout out to, and is the only reason I'm even slightly prepared for today's talk. So let's switch gears to Cullen. Susan alluded to the complete application. Let's go over the parts of it, because I think there's a central VSAS, and then there's these supplemental parts, and at the schools that require those, missing any one of these parts makes your application incomplete, correct?
Yes, so it gets a little bit confusing, but the easiest way to probably break it down for students is that there's kind of a core standard list of things you're going to need as part of the application. So things like your contact information, your clerkship dates that you've already taken an EM rotation in, things like your CV, a photograph, immunization records, and then ultimately your transcript from your school all make up kind of this core standard part of the VSAS application. And as Susan and as Michelle already pointed out, different rotations in different institutions may ask for additional information. So there might be additional or supplemental information on top of that that they might ask for. Things like your step 1 score, things like a letter to tell the program you're applying to why you're interested in doing the rotation at their institution. So as I think of it, those are the two kind of buckets that you have to pay attention to, the kind of core standard things that you have to do, and then the things that you have to look into for each additional rotation to make sure that you're doing everything that that rotation would require of you. The note on that, I will say, and this is a shout out to my program manager at Regents, is, as she always tells my residents, you have to read all the words, right? So as a student, this is your key moment to make sure you're reading all the words for each program you're applying to, because that's where they're going to say what they require additionally, and if you don't do that, that's something that might leave you hanging and waiting to hear from the program where you haven't really completed everything.
Okay. And I think I know the answer because I did my homework a couple hours ago, but where do the students find out all the nuances of the institutional requirements? That's all within VSAS?
So it should be. Through VSAS, there are areas, tabs where you can go to for that, the host institution, and they should tell you what they would require. I'd say probably additional to that, bounce back and forth between their kind of standard website and VSAS to make sure that you're kind of paying attention to both. But it should be through VSAS that you can find out what the additional or supplemental requirements are for whatever rotation you're applying for.
And that's an important distinction, I think, from residency applications, because we'll have various requirements for numbers of letters of recommendation, for instance. All that stuff ends up living on our program websites. At least VSAS centralizes that a little bit.
Right, which is very helpful. And then the second part of this is, okay, so you have these different things you're trying to enter into the system, and then you kind of feel like, what is it that I need to have in at a minimum to be on their screen, on their radar, so they can look at my application and see if I'm going to get accepted for rotation. So the core standard things you definitely want to have in, and then anything additional per that program you'd want to try to get in as you're hitting that application button to make sure your application is complete for that site. The one thing that's a little bit tricky that I think is similar to fast forwarding a year ahead for these students when they're applying through the ERAS system is you have to assign your documents to the specific rotation that you're applying to. So it's nice that you have your CV, your photo, your immunization record in VSAS, but then when you apply at Cook County for rotation with Scott, you have to click the boxes to make sure you're assigning those documents to the rotation that you're trying to get a spot in.
Okay, all right. And then just to clarify, the having a complete application or an incomplete that's also a distinction between the residency application process and VSAS, because an incomplete application is still viewed by the program, and I can make a decision to invite or not invite just based on whatever information that I have available. In this case, I don't see the name, or at least let's say my clerkship director colleague doesn't see the name of the candidate or what block they're being considered for until it's fully complete. So I don't even know how many people are in the pipeline until that.
Yeah, in the best understanding I have of this, and you've kind of referenced this person in their home institution, that's kind of the central VSAS person. So the same thing on the flip side of the host institution, the institutions that have the rotations, we all have a host institution point person. And as the applications get in, they can screen them to see how complete they are. And once they have everything that they would require from the student and also the schools, then they can click a button to make them eligible, which then kicks it on to the specific rotation, and in our case, say our clerkship coordinator, for her to be able to now look at it and see, oh, there's a student that's applied for our specific clerkship.
Can you comment on best practices with this whole process, and in particular with respect to timeline, because we're right in the heat of it right now as we tape this.
Right, so this is timely to have this now. I checked with our coordinator just before coming today just to see where our numbers are, and we're probably maybe halfway or 2/3 of the number of applications we'll get from the summer we probably already have. My guess is that people generally start probably March time frame and go through maybe early summer or the end of summer with their applications. Most of it depends on when you figure out that EM is the fit for you, and then, hey, someone at my institution said I should probably look into doing a second EM rotation. So for the students that are they already are thinking EM, they've had advising that's pointed them in the direction of doing an away rotation. Probably the early springtime is when they're looking into those away rotation slots. And that's when you want to be looking into the timeline then for those host institutions of, can you go ahead and do your application process at that time. But you're correct, Mike, that certainly this is our window that we're in right now, is probably between March and the next few months is kind of the money period.
I learned today that there was a couple month mandatory time period between when we will accept the last student for a block. In our school, apparently it's 2 months.
Okay.
Accepted 2 months ahead of the start of the rotation, which I think process-wise for PDs is very different. Like, we used to sneak people in on the last day, and that's an important part of this timeline, because if you're not starting it until March, but you want to be there in July, you need 2 months lead time, at least at my school. That just seems very cumbersome.
And I don't know, I would assume that that's a little bit different from host institution to host institution, because through the VSAS information, I don't see that there's a hard stop of when you could apply for a certain date. So that might just depend on your host institution of how much time they need to filter through the application, the immunizations, the malpractice information from your home institution, the correct dates you're applying for. So that might be a school-to-school or host-to-host kind of variance, but it's good to know for students, because if you're late to EM especially, and you're hearing this message over the summer, it might affect how quickly you can get an away rotation, versus in the past, like you said, it used to be an email or a phone call, and hey, I can be there tomorrow, and you're set. Now with this, it's a little bit more of a formal process that you have to go through.
Well, how about then two other, I guess, etiquette questions. One, when you start to freak out, like
yes,
it's late, whatever that late date is for you, who do you call? How do you kind of gauge where you are in the process? Because certainly I, as the PD, barely knows what VSAS is, so I can't help you. Who's the right person to contact?
Yes, so through VSAS, when you're applying to a specific rotation, there should be a contact listed. Typically, that's going to be the rotation coordinator, clerkship coordinator. And so that's probably going to be your best person to go to, because they're going to be the one person that's going to know where things are at with the process, where they're at in terms of setting things out, how far in advance. They can let you know some timelines. They can let you know if there's anything that they're still waiting for from you. But then the second part of that is, when's the right time to do that? So you're a student, you're freaking out a little bit, you're on VSAS every hour looking to see where your status is.
Can you do that?
And
That's
well,
awesome. You can look every hour?
You can go as often as you like.
Oh,
Check your email, right? You're in the middle of class refreshing your email, and you see the contact person. So then the question is, when is the best time to contact them? I would probably say give a little time, give a little space. If you just applied for rotation and it's been a few weeks, that's okay, that's normal. If it gets to be a month to 2 months out, now it's probably the window where it would be okay to contact them and ask, just to get a sense of where they're at, and then they might be able to update you on the process, the timeline, things like that. I think it's a two-part thing. One, the timing, so don't be such an eager beaver that you are doing it days after you hit the button to apply. And two, just make sure that you're doing it in a professional way. This is your first contact with that program, and you want to make sure that they think of you in a way of a student that's respectful to their time and professional. So just keep that in mind when you're doing phone calls or emails to the coordinator, because they're probably getting a good number of them, and you want to be the student that they like. You don't want to be the student that's the one that's bothering them all the time.
Yeah, very good point. And, in knowing your audience, Cullen, like they're watching VSAS 101 on Allium.com. They're the ones that are going to check the next day.
Right. So then, yes. So give it a little space, let it breathe a little bit. It's okay.
Breathe everything.
Yes.
And then last quick question. Canceling these rotations. I didn't realize that I had planned to ask you this question until just now, but I had a student rotate with you last year who had another rotation already set up, then got accepted to yours and called me in a tizzy, like, how do I cancel this other one? I want to go to Regents. So, there's certainly etiquette around canceling residency interviews. Is there etiquette issues that we should be considered of in canceling these rotations?
Yeah, I think a couple things. One, the timing of it again. So you have a rotation scheduled for July, for August. It's already set up. You'd like to cancel it. No problem. Plenty of time. You have a rotation set up in July or August, and it's the end of June, and your rotation is supposed to start July 5th. That's a little bit tight, because as you mentioned, Mike, the spots are limited, and this is a process that can take some time. So if you cancel your rotation really close to the start date, you might be leaving that rotation without a student for that time, which is unfortunate because there's probably a student that would have loved to be there during that window. So the first element is the timing again. Make sure that if you know you're not going to go to that rotation, tell the program far in advance. The second part is I would at least contact them. I know through VSAS you can click a button and you can basically decline your spot, and students might feel like that's it, they're done. But I'd probably take the next step, and I would either email or call that clerkship coordinator that's put the effort into looking into things, coordinating things for them, and take the time to just let them know, hey, thanks for the offer. I'm not going to be able to accept it for whatever reason, but I really appreciate you offering me the spot. So those are probably the two things to think about. Timing, make sure you leave enough time so it's respectful to the program and they can get another student to fill that spot, and do it in a professional way again, because you might not go there to rotate as a student at that point, but you very well may apply coming up a month later as an EM applicant, and they want to think of you in a favorable light.
Yeah, and I think to take away rumor mill stuff, most of us are fairly blind to this process, and certainly none of us are going to hold it against an applicant because they canceled a rotation. That's okay. We still want to meet you later in the season,
right.
But you just need to do it the right way.
Yep, right. I'd agree.
The good Dr. Sherman, somewhere across town right now, I want you to be practical and pragmatic for folks. Now, we talked about the right way to do this, but let's talk pitfalls. What are the common mistakes that students need to avoid when they're preparing this VSAS application?
Yeah, Mike, thanks for asking. And I think actually we covered a few of these. The first one, no doubt, is not submitting your application in a timely manner. And then missing out on some of the materials so your application doesn't get processed. A third sort of thing that isn't really necessarily your fault, but if your medical school doesn't offer you the opportunity to apply to VSAS in a timely manner, and for instance, we're actually full right now through December with visiting students. So we've moved a little bit sooner than others, and that's, I think, one of the challenges of VSAS. It's a great service because it allows so much in terms of coordinating materials. It makes it easier for you as a student to apply to more places. It makes it easier for us as a program to receive the materials. But there's no standardized timelines right now, so that your school may offer you the opportunity to get on VSAS later than other students. And then on the receiving side, we are accepting students at different timelines.
Okay, and you know, there's probably a host of reasons why someone doesn't get a spot. Can you just maybe give the top couple of reasons? That certainly availability is the first one we've touched on, but there's others.
Yeah, you know what, Mike, and I think for the first time of your broadcast, I'm going to disappear right now because I'm running on reserve battery, and I'm going to plug my laptop in, okay? So 1 second, I'll be with you because I don't want to lose you here. Hold on a second.
Well, I'm going to use this time while Scott is plugging in and all his slots are free. I believe UCSF in sunny California has a couple of spots. Come on over. It's so much sunnier. You don't want to go to Cook, right? Come on over to UCSF.
Hey.
They're all full. They got plenty of great people already.
I'm not sure what you just said. My earplugs were not in.
Perfect.
But hopefully my
wait to watch the recording.
All right, Mike.
Why do students not get in?
Right. Okay, so why do students not get in? The obvious is that now there's an opportunity as a student. You can apply to 30, 40, 50 places if you wanted. And as you pointed out, you may have 2 spots a month. And so there's more students applying to more places, and the pool is huge. For instance, we have 2 4-week rotations starting in August. So you can divide this number in 2, but we have like 157 applicants for those 12 spots. And in years past, we might have had 15, 20, and maybe the truth of the matter is I really didn't know because it wasn't so standardized. But that's the big reason. I think there's just a lot of people applying for spots. Maybe some are more committed than others, and that's, I think, where you get into the the tips and tricks to getting a spot. And so my thought process there is, if you are really interested in 1 or 2 spots, research those spots, find out when they are accepting applicants, and if you do have a mentor or someone at your medical school or within the Department of Emergency Medicine that's going to be your advocate, make sure that they send that email or make that phone call well before the applicants are selected at that school. I've gotten a couple of emails from people that I certainly like and would love to help out and help out their students, but I'm a little bit unable to because we're full. We're full. So I think that would be something that a student could do.
Well, for the PDs listening, we've created this crazy world in where we're telling all the students you have to do an away rotation, and then there's just not enough give in the system to be able to accommodate them all. And we can't penalize people for that. I mean, the system certainly has made it very clear that it's imperfect.
Yeah, Mike, I agree. And here's, I think, some ways that a student can actually combat this, or sort of, and we need to be flexible to this too. One is, I think that the prime months have always been July and August. You got to be there July and August. I think you need to, as a student, become a little bit more flexible with your timeline. For instance, our Rush starts their 4th year clerkships May 11th, so we've already started. So if you can come early, if there's a way to work that out, or if you can come a little bit later, I think that even people want to come in July and August because they want the slow, but if you can come later to a place that you particularly are interested in coming, I think that still holds a lot of weight. You may not get that letter that's going to go out to a lot of other places, but you're still going to rotate with them well in advance of any decisions being made about the match list.
Yeah, I think availability is a really important point. We're in Block 1 as well. We moved our 4th year to start in May, and there's openings right now. And it's a shame those openings are going to go unused with folks clamoring for Block 3, which is really the one that becomes most popular pretty much everywhere. What about, so Susan alluded to that there's 170-ish, 40-ish, 170-ish schools that participate, but there are schools that don't participate, and then certainly there's these, folks who are going in the other pathway to get a spot at certain places, the non-allopathic LCME folks, how do they get a spot? Like, what do they do? What's their process?
Well, osteopathic students go through VSAS, and so that's how they get a spot. And so if you're an osteopathic student, I think some of the same rules apply. If you're, you know what programs, have traditionally been accepting of osteopathic students, which I think are, many, and so you would apply, potentially to those programs. So, an osteopathic student can apply through VSAS, and please, anyone correct me if I'm wrong, but it's the Canadian and international students that are sort of left out of VSAS, and they're at a real disadvantage, because I think most programs are using VSAS.
Yeah, I think I did a CNN flub there and threw the question to you poorly. So the Canadian and Puerto Rican schools are part of LCME, so we'll take note of that when it comes to residency selection time. But if they can't apply for the clerkships at those schools, like what do? They could still actually do the clerkship. They just have to get to it in a different path. Is that right? Does anyone know the answer to that?
Yeah, I actually looked into this a bit when I was looking at this. So I talked a little bit, and there's a link about this on the VSAS website itself, about a different pathway for people who may not be able to apply through VSAS. And if you actually go to that link, my institution's rotations that are on VSAS are actually available there. It's just through a paper application. And when I looked, there was a ton of our own institutions that were there with contacts that are probably very similar to the VSAS person, but you just go through it on a paper system. And I actually had an osteopathic applicant last year who was at a school that at the time wasn't using VSAS, who went through that process with us and is actually now one of my incoming interns. So that process can work, but you definitely have to do the homework for it.
Okay, thanks. Scott, just to close questions out for you. You're the pragmatist, smart guy, I know. Any other tips and tricks?
I think that's the the biggest thing, as I mentioned. If you can just find out when the couple of because it would be difficult to do this for 30 schools, 30 departments, but find out when they are going to be accepting students. Make sure that if you have that mentor or advisor within your department, they can send that email out well in advance of the time that the school or the clerkship director is selecting.
Okay. Michelle, what have you thought about the conversation so far?
Yeah, I'm listening and I'm learning a ton here, and I'm gathering we all have this similar theme of, well, one, we all agree a second away rotation is critical to do. Like, don't let all of this mumbo jumbo scare you away, because if I heard this for the first time, I'd be like, oh, screw it, I'm just going to do one rotation and just be done. But I think it's valuable to have that second rotation. And this is really kind of a microcosm of all of the gamesmanship that we're going to play during our entire career. So it's just, like Cullen says, read all the words, follow the directions. You should be fine. Be friendly, but not that clingy friend, you know what I mean? But be a friend to, the resources that are important to the process. And for me, I think, you shouldn't panic as much. It's easier said than done. Although I think Mike likes to create more shock and awe. I'm more of like, everything will be fine. Follow the directions, and if anything goes wrong, you can blame Mike.
I like to think of it as pragmatism and hugger, right? Like chief residents, you would have been the hugger chief. Yeah.
Okay.
Any other final comments from the panelists? Anything pop in your head that wasn't mentioned earlier?
Can I just do a follow-up? The international students and students that maybe their school does not participate in VSAS, I think if you go through the clerkship standard website, you might be able to find those clerkships that would be good to apply to. And back when I was a clerkship director, most of my time was back in the day pre-VSAS, and that it just turns into a little bit more paperwork between the home and host institution to get affiliation agreements set up, to get things sent back and forth. It can take a little bit extra time. So everything we've said for VSAS, just leave it even a little bit more time to get that set up. would probably be my recommendation for those students. And you're going to find some rotations where they're going to say, yeah, we'd love to have you, here's the process. And some that are just going to say, we only take students through VSAS right now because that's our pathway for our institution.
You almost wonder if the non-VSAS schools will be the panacea of spots later in this process, right? When the student otherwise, can't get a spot at Cook County because everything started so early, they can still get one of those spots even though they're at a VSAS participating institution. They might have an advantage in this. That's interesting. Any other comments on VSAS? No, good. Thank God. More students. I feel for you guys. All right, let's do the fun part of the program where I ask the panelists the fun question, which is to plug their program. So I would like to start with Susan, and my question is, tell me something I don't know about the University of Utah.
Okay, I think there's probably a lot that you do know about the University of Utah. I'm sorry that I don't have windows looking out into our background like yours, because the mountains are right behind me. Some things you might not know, though, are we have a very generous stipend for all of our residents for anybody who wants to do an international rotation. So if you're a resident and you come and you want to spend an elective month in a global health setting, we actually pay not only your salary, but we'll actually pay you a big stipend to go and do that as well. So we have a ton of people who do that. We also have super fantastic ultrasound training. We have, this is the home of Mike Mallon, and we actually have both several faculty and, as of last year, 3 residents who became ECHO board certified while they were residents in our program. So we have really hotshot ultrasound training here. We also are the program in our hospital that can win any mustache or beard contest, pretty much hands down, and we have an amazing pub trivia team.
That's outstanding answer, well-rounded. I respect the facial hair thing. You must be able to win the blue hair competition too, I would think, at your school. There can't be that many other people competing, no?
A lot of my female residents borrow my hair products.
Good. That's
Nice.
good. Well, students, I think very, very highly of Susan. She was my attending years ago, and I enjoyed working for her then, and I would work for her now. So that's a testament to, or testimonial, I guess, for going to look at her program. But Utah is this cool, like, boutique-y little program, and some folks who aren't from Utah, maybe they'll go check it out because an advisor told them so, and then when they get home, God, I love that place. That's the sort of common experience I hear from our students who go out there to take a look, and others on the trail. So absolutely check out University of Utah. Susan runs a really cool program. Cullen, tell us something we don't know about Regents Health.
Yeah, so first I'd like to say for Michelle, we were just out in California and it rained a couple of days I was there, so I don't know anything about the sunny California that I've heard so much about.
You picked the 2 days of the whole year.
Right.
My bad.
Every time I checked the weather, it was warmer back in Minnesota than it was in San Diego, which I think is atypical, but that's okay. So our program, so we have 10 residents a year. We have an interesting mix of being somewhat of a community-based feel because it's a privately owned health system that's not necessarily run by a university like a number of your programs are, yet we are right in the middle of St. Paul. We're a trauma center. We take care of a large percentage of the indigent population in our local area, so it's a really unique mix of patient population that we see and pathologies at our site. We have a number of fellowships that are right at Regents, so for people that are interested in pursuing fellowships, there's really nice opportunities to do almost kind of junior fellowship or associate director tracks in those areas during your time here. And certainly if you like all seasons, we do have all seasons represented in Minnesota. So if you're not afraid of a little snow and a little cold weather in the winter, this will accomplish all of your seasons that you're hoping to experience and have a good time with. So we have a really fun group of residents. They always compete in the EMRA quiz show and the Sono games the last couple of years, so I think that's going to be a new interview question for me to ask. If we're in this competition, what should our team name be, or what would our uniform look like? So I'm going to see if I can recruit people to that kind of mindset. but we've been having a good time with that, and residents are a lot of fun. People are really nice here that we have at our program, so that's what I've got for you with the Regions program.
Well, I have sent many a student to Regions on an away elective. I think you guys do an exceptional job of training the whole physician, right? Not just how to put a chest tube in, but you guys are teaching admin and operations skills that folks need to succeed when they get out the door. And I'm sure that your grads are doing just that. Your program's quite skilled at it. So students, check out Regions. And now, Scott, I know a whole lot about Cook County. You guys are friends of the program, and I think very, very highly of County. So you're going to have to struggle to tell me something that I don't know about Cook County Hospital.
You know, Mike, you're right. You pretty much know everything about us. We're a 4-year program. We do 17 a year. We've got fellowships in toxicology, simulation, ultrasound. But I do have one thing that you might not know. You do know, of course, that we're a county program, of course. But you might not know the motto of the hospital. So the motto of the hospital here is medical care with respect and dignity regardless of the ability to pay, which is across the institution. It's a place that's, if you want to serve the underserved in our country, this is a great place to do it. We've got a great program director in Steve Bowman, and it's a great place to do a residency.
I 100% agree. They were the first trauma unit in the country and began serving the people of Chicago in a very special way years ago, and people of Chicago need Stroger more now than ever, and you guys certainly meet your mission. Our programs are great friends. We have 2 husband and wife couples together, so as I tell the applicants, we're literally in bed with you guys, and we're good friends. So I think very highly of Stroger, and students, if you're going to come check one of us out, go check the other out as well. We're good crosstown buddies. Michelle, any final words as we close?
No, this is a really great discussion. I think people hopefully will find some value out of this, because I think from the student standpoint, and actually from the program standpoint, it would be great to get us all kind of on the same page, because I think we're starting to mesh, but we're not quite right there. So I'm glad we're kind of opening and this discussion up. And if you have any questions, comments, please put it on the blog, and let's continue this conversation. I think it's worthwhile. Thanks for hosting this, Mike.
No problem, panel. Thank you guys for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.